Everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed Television Edition. We are live on this Wednesday afternoon. If you're watching us live, by the way, of course, Jenn, Coffey, and I are here, and we have tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the IPM Nation live station. We'll be running an encore airing of our 3-hour special that we did at Liberty Forum a couple of weeks ago. It'll be about a week and a half ago.
It was a lot of fun, a lot of great interviews.
Yep.
A lot of interesting information.
Yeah, it'll run tonight at 6, and then it'll rerun tonight at 10 if you miss it, and then we will make it available on demand. So that is tonight. It's too big to run on DKRN, so we're going to run that exclusively on IPMNation.com. And in fact, our guest today is one of the people that we interviewed.
Actually,
yes.
During that. Yes.
So
there were a lot of state representatives. I was at the Liberty Forum, and I was happy to see that there were so many state reps. So kudos to you for going there and talking to people. I'd like you. I know you're a Manchester Democratic representative. Can you tell us what district you represent?
Hillsborough District 12.
And this is Amanda Bouldin, by the way.
Hi.
And what parts of? I'm sorry. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. No, I'm. Who is this? You lovely young lady sitting next to you.
This is my daughter, Sophia. She's 8.5. She goes to Polaris Charter School. Say hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Really quick, what is a charter school for those who don't know?
It's publicly funded school, and I guess they have different rules about how they can run their education program. Mm-hmm. Her school does use Common Core. It's a project-based school. They don't have homework, so most of their education, their learning process involves they start with a subject and they work a long-term project to incorporating all sorts of different ideas. And charter schools are great for any sort of level of education. For some reason, despite the fact that they're funded about half the rate of a normal public school, they managed to do more with it. I don't know.
Right.
I certainly haven't been able to live on a budget, and I'm 30, but they're doing a pretty good job. So, for example, Sophia's technically a third grader, but she's been doing 5th grade level math and reading and writing.
Wow. Congratulations.
And
that's a lot of dedication and hard work to be able to do 2 grades higher than where you're at. Yeah. But I can understand what you're saying about the building blocks. It's really how we all learn math. You learn to add, you learn to subtract, and then you move on to division, and then eventually, if you're one of those really smart people, you do calculus, or if you're like me, you stop at algebra and scream when you pass.
Right.
Do you find, and I know this isn't the main thing we're going to talk about today, but do you find that there's a lot of misconceptions about charter schools? A lot of people you talk to don't really understand what they are, or they have a kind of a different idea? Because I know a lot of people object to the whole concept, and for whatever reason.
In the State House, we recently voted on charter school funding, and of course I supported it because I didn't want to catch heck from her friends' moms.
Right. Right.
But a lot of people were claiming that charter schools get more money than regular public schools, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
So I think that one big misconception is they thought that certain students were getting special treatment.
Okay. Isn't it almost half the cost
it's
of
40%.
Traditional public school for so 40%?
I believe, yeah.
That's
40,
a
42.
huge savings.
It is, yeah. And somehow they make it happen. And it's a cute little school. And one of the other perks of the charter school is that they have a class size of about 15 to 1, but sometimes that swells to like 15 to 3. So that's teachers' age showing up. So
that's good.
Sophia gets the specialized attention that she needs. But that's not just for kids that want to move forward faster. It's also for kids that maybe have behavioral issues or attention issues, whatever's going on. And the charter schools aren't selective with their attendance. Sophia got in on the wait list after the lottery had closed, so she sat on a wait list for a while, and we just hoped and prayed that she would get in. But every year they run a lottery to fill the open spots.
Wow.
So if people move away, or if they get more funding or raise more money, and they can expand the number of classrooms in the school. But no matter what, it always stays at her school at 15 to 1. So they just have more teachers and more classrooms.
That's really good.
That's great.
Yeah, because typically in a public school, it's 30, 35 kids in a class?
It can be.
Yeah.
It
That's
can be.
how her kindergarten class was.
And then when you get to the collegiate levels, you're talking
that's a
100
whole
people in a room
different-
listening to one person out front.
Right.
And that doesn't work.
In your kindergarten?
Yeah.
She said they had like 25 or 27 in her kindergarten.
Yeah.
Did you find that was harder for you than it is now when it's less kids in the room with you?
Maybe it's hard to remember.
Well, I have more friends.
Yeah, that's certainly
I only
true.
have like one friend in kindergarten. Now I have like half my class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're excelling so well in so many ways.
I hope that a lot of kids seek out charter schools. There's a girl I know who lives in Rochester, I think, and she's a 13-year-old daughter of a friend of mine. And when I got to know her over the summer, because we worked on a project together, I realized that she's really mature, really ahead of her years. And I asked her where she's going to school, what she's doing, and I pressured her, like, you got to get in a charter school. If your parents can't afford private school, you got to make use of what your gifts are. You know, don't waste it with getting an education that only allows you to progress at the rate of other people. And she applied at a charter school last I heard, so that made me really happy.
Oh, that's
great.
really good.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of outreach, looking out for people in a lot of different ways, it seems. I know your history, and that's why, yes, I am a Republican, but this is one of my favorite Democratic reps, and I'm glad you're up at the State House. I am glad that you're up there.
Thanks.
I know you from your days of, and you still do it every Thanksgiving. You work really hard to help feed families across our state. But the reason we brought you on air today was now you're doing work in the State House that can actually save lives, literally save lives. And I think that it's really important, and I know Matt agreed, that as many people in New Hampshire hear about this so they can apply the pressure that's necessary to the legislature to make sure that this lands on Governor Hassan's desk and that she signs it into law and doesn't veto it.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
could we just take one bill at a time and talk about them?
Well, my first bill is House Bill 271. This is the less controversial legislation. And what I want to do is make it easier for people to access a medication called Narcan. Narcan's been in the news a lot lately because I guess we used it thousands of times last year in the state. I'm not sure.
At least.
And currently only EMT can administer it. And I think there's different levels of EMT, like
Yes.
different qualifications.
I
only
can answer
certain
those. Yeah,
kinds.
absolutely. Yep. So
Right.
a basic EMT currently cannot administer Narcan.
Oh, okay.
An advanced
EMS.
an advanced EMT can
Yeah.
administer Narcan, and so can a paramedic. EMS
Okay.
in general just is emergency medical services.
okay, yeah.
So you never know who's going to show up at your door if the first person on scene there can't
Right.
administer it. All they're going to be able to do is support breathing and hope somebody with the drug gets there fast enough, because brain death starts within 5 minutes of overdose.
Well, so
Right.
what is Narcan, and what is the application that for it?
Narcan is called an opioid antagonist.
Okay.
So it reverses the effects of an opiate-induced overdose,
Okay.
whether that's from prescription medication or street heroin or anything like that.
Okay.
Whether it's intentional, maybe a suicide, or if it's accidental, got mixed up on medication, took too many of the wrong thing,
Sure.
or if it's I don't know what I'm shooting up kind of
Right.
situation.
Right.
So it goes to the opioid receptors and like something, and it blocks them, and I'm not a doctor, and shuts the whole thing down so that they're no longer effective for some period of time.
Okay.
And when someone's having an opioid-induced overdose, it mostly affects breathing.
Okay.
And like Jen was saying, when the reduced breathing begins, typically people have about 5 minutes until brain damage starts. That's what
Okay.
I was told by a lot of doctors, ER doctors that I spoke to.
Okay.
And,
Because there's
you know,
nothing getting to the brain, right? Is that
Right.
Okay.
And with any medical professional, they're trained, breathing is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if the guy's leg is cut off and he's bleeding out. This is a really gory show, but it doesn't matter what else is going on. If they're
Cardiac
not
and
breathing.
respiratory.
Right.
Those are our top two. That's where we go.
Right. You have to
And
solve those problems first to be
Right.
able to deal with anything else. So, when we have snowbanks running into the streets and the road is technically one way, but nobody knows that, and there are all kinds of things that can block an ambulance from getting there in time, and you only have 5 minutes. That's why letting parents who, the parents of the addicts who discover their children unconscious on the floor, letting them have a dose of Narcan in their house, in the medicine cabinet, or wherever they want to keep it, is vital. And I know from talking to parents all over the state, whose kids are actively using drugs or whose kids are in recovery who have overdosed in the past.
Sure.
That when you find a loved one unconscious and the only thing that you can do to help them is call 911 and then sit there and wait, those minutes are some of the longest minutes of your life.
Well, plus too, it sounds like even when you're calling 911, you don't know that whoever is showing up to help is necessarily even going to be someone who's authorized to administer the drug, right?
What they will be able to do is support their breathing, and that's the most important thing. You're
And
right.
it's really hard to do.
What happens is
overdose.
with respiratory distress or respiratory arrest, and this is a scary thing for me as an EMT that other people don't necessarily realize, is that sometimes when you look at that person, they might look like they're kind of snoring. They're just kind of a slight movement and maybe a little snory sound. And that's what we call agonal respirations. That's not effective breathing. This person is not breathing. They might look like they're sleepy. They might look like they're kind of snoring, but oftentimes their color will be very darker. And this isn't just about heroin. I can say that one of the saves that sticks with my mind from my service in EMS was a United States veteran who had prescription medications from the VA and was trying to do all the things the right way, but accidentally took too much. And when I arrived, all I could do was support his airway until further help arrived to give the Narcan. So it's not just, kids on heroin. This could be your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, who is on medications that was involved in our military services, for example. And that's just two very small segments of our society that are affected by overdose.
Right. Also, the elderly population.
Yeah.
We have a lot of elderly people, people retiring in New Hampshire. And when you're old and you take a lot of pills and you have one of those boxes with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, who knows what could happen.
You're trying to tell me I'm old? I have one of those boxes,
I just haven't earned one of those boxes yet, but I will one day.
No. I don't want you to have to ever earn one. I don't want you. But you're right. And in some of these communities, and they're confused, and they might forget they took their meds and retake their meds and accidentally overdose. And I've seen that.
I have a cousin who's she's diabetic, so that's one situation that could make her unconscious. And then on top of that, she has back pain, and her doctor is more than happy to prescribe her codeine for that, which is an opiate. And she told me over Christmas, I went to visit her, and my cousin's in her 40s. My generations in my family are weird, but so she told me over Christmas that her doctor now wants to prescribe an additional opiate. So in addition to the codeine, he wants her on something else. I think it was oxycodone or Oxycontin, or I don't know. So, and it's cuckoo because these drugs are addictive. There's this potential for overdose, and someone who's diabetic can have episodes where they're confused or they're not able to focus. So it seems like a recipe for disaster, and that's the kind of person where when she gets her prescription for the opiate, I would like people like that to get a prescription for Narcan, and for her to go home to her son and say, look, honey, this is where I keep the Narcan if you find me and you're confused. And the other really awesome part about this particular type of medication, because it's just an opioid antagonist, if you give it to someone who doesn't have opiates in their system, nothing happens.
Okay.
So it's not risky.
Well, so I was going to ask you, what is the because this seems like common sense to me. So what's the argument against it? Why would some people oppose something like this?
Because they don't have any compassion. Because they think that because they have a lot of misconceptions about drug abuse. The most common thing that I hear is, well, won't this just encourage people to use more drugs? And I'm just really glad that there are so many people in the world who are so far removed from the logic of a drug addict that they can't comprehend why this would be helpful. And that's great. That's fine. They can just stay in their corner and not understanding. That's good for their life.
Right.
And then unfortunately, that seems to be a lot of the questions that you get are aimed more towards addict than it is towards everybody.
Right.
And it's not just addicts.
Right.
But when we look at the situation that's going on in the state of New Hampshire, especially with addiction, we have a very serious issue going on. And you were talking about some numbers earlier that I found really frightening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not my numbers. They come from the state and the newspaper. But we had 300 overdoses in general. 300 overdose deaths overall in New Hampshire last year. And I think we had something around 3,000 overdoses just in our state. And what's crazy is that Massachusetts currently has half the rate of overdose death that as of 2014 that we have here. So, and our demographics are a little different. Massachusetts is, high population. They're a little over 6 million people. And
a lot more partying going on there, wouldn't you think? Plymouth and the Cape Cod.
And, with St. Patrick's.
Well, yeah, definitely yesterday.
Yeah.
A lot of Irish folks.
And we have, they have a younger population. We have an older population. So, and I think
so they have a younger population, we have an older population, but we have
percentage of our younger population is dying.
50% higher death rate in the state of New Hampshire from overdose than in the state of Massachusetts.
Right, theirs is 50% lower.
Theirs is 50% lower.
Right.
We're 50% higher.
For them, it's something around 13 deaths per capita.
And they have this law on the books.
And we have around 23 deaths per capita.
They have the Narcan law on the books.
Right, they have a giant Narcan tax-funded program. So they're paying to administer it, paying to hand it out to people, and my legislation doesn't go that far. It's just, can we make it available for people to buy if they want it? And my legislation doesn't even go that far. With my bill, you still have to go through a doctor, get a prescription. So it's pretty controlled. It's not going to be on the shelf at Target or CVS.
Exactly, and I think it's important for people to know that what your bill does, it's different, is all it's allowing is a third party, mom, dad, husband, wife, child,
Right.
maybe, your 25-year-old son, whatever, to be able to have a prescription for Narcan to use for their loved one should the need arise.
Right.
So you're not even proposing some big expensive program to do this. You're just it's
not gonna happen this year anyway.
Make it so that people can
Actually
have access to
exactly
it.
just to give them access. Actually, I don't think this. If your bill passes, the only way I can see it, I can't see it costing the state really much of anything.
Nope, there's no fiscal note on the bill.
Yeah,
Right.
But I could see it saving some money because maybe we'll stop burying as many people.
Right, and then also there are a lot of people who don't get medical help in time, but they don't die before medical help arrives, and they have brain damage, that 5-minute window we were talking about.
Yeah.
And those people are on life support probably right now all over the state. And just over the weekend, 3 people died in Manchester, just in Manchester, from overdose. And since January 1st, I believe, 105 people have overdosed.
So
just in Manchester,
and that's
some
the
of
number.
Those have brain damage.
That's the number that really got me. 105 people in 3 months have died in the state of Manchester. I mean, in the town, the city of Manchester, just Manchester.
Right.
300 people died in the entire state last year.
Well, that's
so we're
105
already
overdoses.
Poised to end up with 500.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely the rate of increase, 300, whereas I think it was in 2013 or 2012, there were maybe like 150 overdoses. So it's kind of doubled just in 1 or 2 years.
I can tell you from working in the ER, I honestly can't tell you that I can remember a day that I worked that I didn't have an overdose patient from either prescription or illicit drugs.
But I know we hear a lot about the heroin problem too. That's just gotten worse and worse, so I would assume that that's driving those numbers up.
And especially since what we've been hearing about in Manchester is that there's some bad batches out there. There's some people that have put some bad stuff in this heroin. Maybe it's rat poisoning. Maybe it
actually. And it's weird for me to know this much about heroin. I never planned for my life to turn out like this, but
when you signed up to be a legislator, did you think you were going to be doing this much research?
About heroin. I can't tell you where to get it, but I can tell you what's in it, and it's not heroin. It's fentanyl. So fentanyl is pain medication, just like all the other, just like heroin. Heroin's a
and highly
pain
addictive
medication. And so it's 2 or 3 times more potent than heroin. It looks like heroin, and they're cutting the heroin with it. Sometimes they're substituting the heroin with fentanyl altogether, and people that are using don't have any idea the potency. So, and they go by volume, how much they choose to use.
Yep.
And they're not pharmacists. And that's part of the problem.
Right.
So they're overdosing. They're basically
Right.
killing their own respiratory drive.
I think half of the 300 overdose deaths last year, the chief medical examiner's office reported that roughly half were from fentanyl.
Wow.
Yep. People don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah. So what's the status of this bill? Where are we with this?
It passed the House unanimously.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
That's fantastic, and that's no easy.
That is not an easy thing. And you're in the minority.
Well, the Health and Human Services Committee is especially compassionate, I think.
Yeah.
Most of them have a background in healthcare.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a background in healthcare, you end up by default being a really compassionate person.
Right.
And they've
You're not
heard
so
of this
concerned with
drug
politics.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've heard about this before.
They have the education to know that it is harmless.
Wasn't this like the second or third attempt to get this bill through the House?
I have no idea if anyone's ever tried before.
The Narcan bill?
Yeah, I have no idea. And the other
And you got it
piece
through
of the
unanimous.
puzzle.
That's awesome.
The other piece of the puzzle is police having it, because sometimes police show up before the ambulance shows up, and that involves spending money. And so I'm not going to fight that fight.
Yeah.
But Governor Hassan recently issued a rule change. I don't know how being governor works, or if I guess you could just make rules. I don't know.
It's not easy in this state. You got the executive council and everything. There's not much a governor can actually do. But
yeah, she issued a rule change to allow police departments to carry Narcan at their own expense and at their own liability.
Good.
So
Okay.
I think that the Concord police chief was quoted in the Concord Monitor as saying, probably not going to happen.
Oh,
But
really?
But I think that
I
that
can
Concord
remember
had-
talking to PD and having arguments over trying to get them to carry AEDs, automatic external defibrillators.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they have to do training. They have to.
Well, it's
get the
not just
proper
that,
insurance.
but
It's
you got to kind
expensive.
of look at it from the sense of how far do you want to push the police department into the medical field
Mm.
That's true.
versus
Yeah.
the medical field. I mean,
Yeah. Can we clear the snowbanks, please?
yeah. and I've been in that situation where, I've had police officers call me, Jen, don't go there. Wait. Or hang on, the plow truck is coming,
Yeah.
because you can't get to
Yeah.
where you're trying to get to because there's 2 feet of snow and the ambulance is not going to make it. Chains and
Right.
all, we're not going to get there.
Right. Yeah. That's why we need Narcan in our kitchen cabinets. But medicine cabinets, not kitchen cabinets.
Yeah.
Kitchen
Everyone
cabinets will
uses
be
it.
odd, but
The other cool thing about Narcan is that it's available as a nasal spray.
okay.
And it's
So
only
people
like
don't have to
$30 or
necessarily be
$50.
injecting others with needles.
Right, and we don't want that.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
messy and dangerous, and bad things could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the Afrin, just and it's done. At the committee hearing for the bill, this guy named Doug, who lives, I think, in the Seacoast area, his daughter passed from heroin overdose just last fall, and he's really passionate supporter of stuff like this, and he went down to Massachusetts and got an empty cartridge from a Narcan nasal spray, and he marched up to the podium in the committee room, and he gave them all a course on how to administer Narcan. And
Wow.
yeah, it was really cool. And he also, broke down crying, holding up a big picture of his daughter. It was kind of theatrical, but he's awesome. He's one of those people that you can tell from their pain, like you can really
Yes.
feel how important this is.
Right.
And I can understand. I think that's great that he went in there and showed them all how it worked. It's really
Yeah,
not that
it was
bad.
really
It's
cool.
kind of,
Yeah.
it
It
is.
took like 2 minutes.
It's like a nasal spray. It really is kind of like,
Connect a couple of things and
Yeah,
you're
and
done.
there you go. I've used
Yeah.
it. I've done. I mean, not on myself, obviously, but for patients.
So this all seems like common sense stuff, but then you have something else, which I personally, I think we both think is common sense, but
Yeah,
it's
just-
more controversial.
Before we hit that, though, the Senate.
Uh-huh.
Are you getting any feedback or any
I've
idea?
been trying to get appointments with the senators on the Health and Human Services Committee for when the Narcan bill goes to the Senate. No luck yet. They're pretty busy people. They're kind of the untouchables, but I'm trying. But I'm feeling pretty optimistic about it. I know that the state Department of Safety supports it. They came out and spoke in favor. We had a police officer come out and speak in favor
Didn't the
of the Narcan
Chiefs
bill.
of Police Association come out?
I don't think so. I think it
No?
was just a police officer, Corey McDonald from Portsmouth. I want to say Portsmouth PD. Came out and spoke in favor. I took a picture of the sign-in sheet. Who all spoke? So
Hopefully,
I'll
all
look
these
it up,
people will
but-
come back for the Senate
Yeah,
hearings.
and I think that they will, because it's really important to them too. You know,
But
they wouldn't have gone to the trouble of spending an hour or whatever at the State House for the hearing if it didn't matter to them.
Right.
They don't get paid to sit there, so.
Right.
So that's one life-saving bill you're working on, and,
Yeah.
and Matt was indicating your other bill.
So the other one is HB 270. So there, 271 is Narcan and 270 is this one. It's 911 immunity.
Okay.
So this one's really controversial, and it's mostly the people that are afraid of legislation like this are afraid that it will benefit the wrong people.
Right.
So 911 immunity is it's law in 22 other states in the country, and it basically, if someone calls 911 to report an overdose, and the police show up and there's evidence to support the charge of possession, the people involved in the situation are immune from the charge of possession.
Being the person who made the call and the person who's overdosing.
Right. And the reasoning behind that is, 300 people died last year. How many of them died because someone knew that they were overdosing, thought about how they would have to incriminate themselves to get the medical help,
Right.
weighed the pros and cons in their own way, ways
Right.
that I can't comprehend,
Right.
and decided to leave.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories, at least out of, I've been working with the commander of the narcotics unit in Quincy, Massachusetts. His name's Lieutenant Detective Patrick Glenn. He's championing stuff like this. He's been on the force for like 30 years. So he's seen the before and he's seen the after.
Yeah.
And he knows that it works. So this has been law in Massachusetts since 2010. And he told me that before they passed this legislation in Massachusetts, that they would get overdose calls and they'd show up at the scene and all they'd find is a guy slumped over in a chair holding his driver's license.
Right.
So the scene had been prepped. You know?
Right. Right.
And when you've only got 5 minutes, what are you going to spend that 5 minutes doing?
I've
Making a
had,
phone
we've
call
had,
or cleaning up the scene?
Right.
I've seen situations where a car just pulls up, throws the person out at the ER, and speeds off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an incident once. I remember a cardiologist running into the ER with a wheelchair with someone he found. It's not unusual.
Yeah.
What's sick about it is it's the norm. The norm is to run away from the scene.
Right.
The norm is to get out of the area or to move the person to avoid incrimination because they don't want to go to jail because you are 16 and didn't realize if you drank a pint of whiskey you could die from alcohol poisoning, or you're 35 and oops, you made the wrong combo.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of, so the concerns that a lot of people have is they're concerned that this will let the drug dealers off the hook. Or, one concern that was raised was that if you're the one who supplied something intoxicating to another person and then you sexually abuse that person and then they happen to overdose and then you call 911.
We're really stretching.
I know.
Some people think like that, though. They go to the worst case scenario of everything and assume that that's how what happens all the time.
Your bill says that if someone calls 911 because of an overdose,
that they get immunity from only the charge of
does your
possession.
bill say if somebody calls 911 because of a rape?
No.
No. Okay. Does it say someone calls 911 because they threw their friend off the balcony?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So all your bill says is if you call 911 and try to save this person's life,
You won't be charged with possession.
thank you.
And that's all. But
Yeah.
let's say
I don't understand the logic against what we just said.
because usually when they show up, not usually, sometimes when police show up at a call for medical help, there's evidence of bigger crimes. Like,
Right.
I think in the last week, police responded to a report of an overdose and ended up discovering that the person who was overdosing had robbed a bank in New Hampshire earlier that day. But that's
That's a full day.
So that's been the concern.
How likely is that to occur again?
I don't know.
Right, but again, it's people think that way though. Whatever the worst case scenario is, it's probably the norm.
But
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, have you not heard in the legislature comments made about county jails or even the state prison about overcrowding issues and needing for expansion, and that's why they're building the new women's prison, and they, all these, that violent offenders are actually getting out earlier
I haven't heard
because
about
of
that.
room. Oh.
I don't know if anyone's concerned about that this year.
I
If they are,
am.
they should call me. 'Cause I'm on the same page.
I kind of feel like if you rob a bank or try and kill someone or you rape someone, that you should, I'd rather have
Do
that
not
jail
pass go.
cell for, do not pass go.
Right.
Let's put them in the jail cell and let's take these other guys that did something stupid and try education, prevention, and treatment for a
Right.
change.
Right, but you're kind of beating your head against a brick wall by saying that they did something stupid, because some people think that what they did is Darwinism in play. And there are people that have
It's that-
argued Darwinism. They say
That no compassion thing.
Yeah, we all know
You literally
heroin
had
kills
people-
people. You shouldn't do it.
So you literally
that's
had
true.
people arguing with you, oh, well, too bad, too sad, they died,
Not
they were
in-
too stupid.
Not in the State House, but there is that tone. No one says
Wow.
nasty things like that in the State House, but there's always the internet for comments like that. But that's the kind of insanity of it all, is that heroin is chemically identical to the kind of medication that you would get if you had a hip replacement, and with the hip
Or
replacement,
spinal surgery.
right, you're going to be in the hospital for how long, and you're going to be on this medication for how long, and so they're saying that you deserve whatever you get because you took that drug, and that's but that's
Wow,
but
that's
the funny
just
part
cruel.
is that people on both sides of the issue, people that are pushing for compassion and people that are pushing for no compassion and for jail time, both of them are operating on emotion. I know that sounds
Right.
funny, but they're both operating on their emotional reaction, how they perceive the situation.
There is a logic. Let me just play devil's advocate on this for just a little bit. There is a logic, as much as I disagree with it, to the no compassion argument. Because I would say, the first time you stick a needle in your arm and shoot heroin, there really is no excuse for not knowing that you're probably either going to ruin your life, if you're lucky, that's the worst thing that'll happen to you, or you're going to end up dead. So I kind of understand why someone, again, I don't agree, but I understand why someone looks at that person and says, well, they knew what they were getting into. So whatever is coming to them, that's what they got coming. But you also have to step back and say, even if you look at it that way, that person is also someone's son or someone's daughter or someone's parent or someone's sibling. There's other people who would prefer that individual stay alive, no matter how much they may have wrecked their own life.
Right.
There are other people connected to that individual. So if we can do something to keep them from, so that maybe the worst thing that does happen to them is that they've ruined their life, but they're alive and they can recover from ruining their life, then that's the better option.
Yeah, with the parents that I've spoken to whose children are either using or in recovery, they knew their kids when their kids were like this.
Right. Exactly.
And there's nothing I wouldn't do for her.
Right. Right.
I'm getting teary-eyed, but
No,
I
get it. I'm
You
a
remember
mom.
when that person didn't have those problems, and you're praying to God that they can get back to being that person again.
Right.
And you want to keep them alive.
Right.
I think one of the I understand, I really do.
Yeah.
One of the worst experiences I ever had was a guy came in, and I think it stuck with me because he looked like my dad. So I don't know, maybe that was the connection. But he came in, and he brought his 22-year-old son with him. And his son was begging us for help to quit heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And all we could do is offer him a piece of paper with numbers to call.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough in place. Maybe if more people start thinking like you and we start going in that direction, then we can get more people into rehab. I mean, heck, there are people that want to go to rehab and they can't go because they can't get a medical doctor to clear them to get entrance into it. And a lot of people don't even know that you have to have that.
We don't have any funding for treatment programs. We don't have any beds, and that was one of the.
We'd rather spend the money incarcerating them than we would actually trying to cure and stop the problem.
$36,000 a year, and it costs about.
Can you say that again?
$36,000 a year to keep somebody in jail.
Right. Oh, we have a call.
About $6,000.
Grab this.
Somebody's watching.
Yes, of course. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's on the line?
Hey, Matt, it's Don. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I just had a couple comments for your guest.
Sure.
And hopefully, I'm trying to think about how to say this without sounding cold-hearted. But
Okay.
first of all, I had a nephew that overdosed on heroin, and guess what? Like Matt just said a few minutes ago, first time you use it, especially nowadays, past couple of years, you just said 300 deaths. That's a chance that you are taking to shoot that heroin into your body. And as far as I'm concerned, I forget the name of the drug that they use, that they want the cops to use and stuff.
Narcan.
It's just that's like to me a babysitter. It's like, okay, I'm gonna screw up, do heroin, and I'm not trying to sound cold, but someone will be there to save my butt. I don't buy it. And then the other thing is about if you call 911. Number one, if the cops come in and the EMTs, the cops sees a spoon and baggies, after they save his ass, I think he should be arrested and then maybe put him in a drug program. But I have no compassion for these people that shoot heroin and then, now save my butt. That's a choice. I know it's addictive, so cigarettes. I smoke cigarettes. But that's my take on that.
But Don, can I ask you this? Let's say, okay, so if you smoke cigarettes, would you want someone to say, let's say you had some sort of health complications due to that? I mean, if you have to go to the hospital or to the emergency room, maybe a heart issue or something, God forbid, I don't want anything to happen to you. But if something happened to you as a result of your smoking, should you be denied treatment? Should they just say, well, this guy's a smoker, he knew what he was getting into, let's just let him die?
Can I say this? Smoking's legal.
Yeah.
Well, so are prescription medications, and I think that...
Okay, and like the lady said before, don't get me wrong, I don't mean about... I'm a diabetic too, and stuff can happen. I'm not talking about the guy that's taking codeine or Vicodin and made a mistake. Yeah, save his butt. But these guys, and also as well as you guys know, when they run out of money, what's the first thing they do? They'll hold it up to the convenience store. I have no compassion for them. Like I said, I had a nephew that died from it. So maybe I'm cold-hearted, but they know what they're doing. Now they got a babysitter.
Yeah.
I have a comment on this.
Sure.
I think that, let me think. One big misconception about what the Narcan legislation would do, people assume that it's going to happen at taxpayer cost. But this isn't the case. If you want to go get addicted to heroin and you know full well what it's going to do to you, and Jenn wants to buy some Narcan to save your life in case you overdose, that's going to happen out of Jenn's pocket.
Right,
that's how this legislation works. So, and that's kind of one of the biggest problems in the State House, is that everybody's yelling at each other about how to spend somebody else's money. It's just one gigantic debate about how to spend other people's money, and depending on who's in the majority every year, the answer is going to change, and it's so trivial and frustrating for me. And that's why I like this bill, is because it leaves it up to the person who owns the wallet. That's their choice, how they want to spend it.
It is frustrating, just like the spice thing last year. Same thing in my book. Same thing. People overdose. Don't do it. I know it sounds black and white, but that's where I'm coming from.
Well, no, I understand the logic of what you're saying, Don. I do.
I like to think that we would want to be a society that wants to save people's lives and wants to at least give them one chance to straighten up. And that might be what she does with this legislation.
I'll go along with one chance, sure. You didn't say that before. I'll go along with one chance. You almost died, buddy. Do it again. I'm not going to save you. I'll go along with one chance, yeah.
A lot of times that's what you'll see I've seen that in the emergency situations, and the people wake up after having a tube in their throat, breathing for them, and can't believe what they did to themselves. Sure, that happens.
Definitely.
But
my nephew had chances and kept doing it, so guess what? He's not here.
Right.
He had chances.
And a lot of overdoses are prescription drugs that are 10 times stronger than the heroin, and administered by medical professionals, and people either accidentally or intently.
Right. I don't have the answer, but I just had to throw my 2 cents in because I get sick of people making excuses for these people. And then, like I said, they often rob family members, stores, mothers, fathers, But anyway, all right, guys, thanks for listening to me.
All right, Don, thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
I have another comment, and this is where I'm going to really come across like a lunatic.
Okay.
But I'm okay with this. A lot of people who use heroin started out on prescription drugs.
I've read that.
I met a guy who, you know what Edward Snowden looks like?
Of course,
He looks like that, like just real clean cut, like nice haircut, glasses, just handsome guy. I mean, I probably have my own imaginary love affair with Edward Snowden, but so that's what this guy looks like. He lives here in Manchester, and his name's Jason. And so his life went like this, like normal childhood, whatever, public school, good education, fiance, I think, mortgage, job. sports injury, opiate painkillers for
Yep.
the sports injury, addiction to the opiate painkillers. And then this is where things get interesting. It's federal law that if your doctor discovers that you're addicted to your medication, they're required to cut you off, or they face 25 years in prison.
Wow.
So then he got cut off. So he didn't get sober. He's addicted.
Right.
So he started buying the pills on the street. And the pills are very expensive on the street compared to getting them by prescription.
Yeah.
And then someone said, hey, did you know that this heroin is chemically identical to what you're addicted to? Why don't you try this instead? It's dirt cheap.
Right.
And then it all fell apart from there.
Yeah.
So it's not like these people are coming out of the womb shooting up heroin and robbing convenience stores.
Right, right.
It's a progression. There's another guy that I talked to. He's talking about give him one chance. How about 5? I'd like you to have 5 chances, because I met a guy who's he was using heroin, addicted. He was revived 5 times by Narcan in the last 7 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's a preacher now.
Yeah.
And he travels around the state talking about his story to youths and trying to convince them, educating them, convincing them to either get off of drugs or not try them altogether.
Right.
So how
right.
about 5 times, and then maybe he can be a preacher.
Right.
Why 1 time?
Yeah.
There's a heavy metal band called Korn,
Yeah.
and their lead singer Head.
No.
Jonathan
No,
Davis is the
wait a minute.
lead singer.
Right. Head
Right,
is the guy with the
Head's
dreadlocks.
the guy
With
with
the
the
dreadlocks,
dreadlocks.
yeah.
Right. The other, he cleaned up his act. He was addicted
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
He, found religion,
methamphetamines
right?
and then went around talking. And I actually went because in New Hampshire they have a thing called Soul Fest. I actually went years ago with my son and heard him speak, and it was phenomenal to look at these kids. Here's this guy, dreadlocks, tattoos everywhere. You look at the audience, and all the kids are in black, and they got black eyeliner everywhere, and drawings on their faces, and Hello Kitty, and I don't know. And
Yeah, I don't know why Hello Kitty went goth.
were just. I don't either, and they were just so enthralled with everything that he had to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was
And
amazing.
that's one big
and
piece
he
of the
died
puzzle.
more than once before he finally straightened out.
Right.
So you are right. It can take more than one.
Right, and that's one big piece of the puzzle is that people like you and me probably have no understanding of what it's like to be addicted to a drug and to try to quit. I've quit caffeine, I quit smoking cigarettes, but that's the extent of my experience, right? And so it's hard for me to relate to or counsel someone who's been through that.
Right.
But who's better for that job than someone who's survived
Yeah,
and lived
that's
to
true.
tell the tale
That's a good
and
point.
can say, this is what I had to do on day 2 and day 3 and day 55
Right.
to get through this. Those are the people that we need to keep. This is why we need to keep people alive, is because they can bring up other people with them
Yeah.
when they get a chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And like you said, in the 22 states that already have similar laws,
This guy did not fall down. Yeah.
they've seen this guy didn't fall down.
Yeah.
They've seen a substantial decrease in usage. They've seen a substantial decrease in death from overdose.
Uh-huh.
And they're seeing an increase in education and prevention.
Right.
So
That's one really cool thing about
You know?
the Narcan is that the availability of Narcan necessitates education. Washington State increased availability to Narcan, I think in 2010, and they did a follow-up study on the drug-using community there to see what the results were. And as far as the 911 immunity law that they implemented, 88% of the people surveyed said that they were more likely to call 911 now when they witness an overdose. So that means that 88% were less likely before, which is terrifying.
Right.
And then also among the people that were trained to administer Narcan, a number of really incredible things happened. So first, their self-esteem, their esteem among the community members was raised. Like, hey, Jen's that lady; she knows how to save a life. So if we see something, we can get Jenn. And then Jen's self-esteem goes up because she's like, yeah, I'm that guy that can save a life. And then self-esteem is a big part of drug addiction, so that matters. That's a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And then among the population that they studied in Washington State, there were some people that ended up exiting the community altogether and moving on with their lives because they were finally so educated about the riskiness of their behavior and had enough esteem to think, you know what, I matter. I can do something with my life. And if anyone who's watching this show knows a drinker, a heavy drinker, they know that kind of person is in that situation because their lives suck, from their own perspective. They're unhappy. They haven't accomplished what they want.
Well, plus there's something that happens, you know,
Trauma.
Physically too. I mean, some people are born. I was actually surprised at what you told me once, like how many people are, you know, because of something
It's
genetic
like 50,
that happens.
50, if you're the child of an alcoholic, you have a 50% chance of being an alcoholic. It was one statistic I heard once, and I can't validate it.
I have kind of questions, really, and it's a topic for another day. I don't know, but I have doubts about the idea that it could be genetic. My mom is from Oklahoma originally, which, you know, is Native American country, and she used to tell me, and she's a big history buff, so I always believed her. She used to tell me that that Native Americans have a predisposition for alcoholism, like a genetic predisposition for it. And I always believed it because I was like, sure, whatever, you know, I was this size, right? Mm-hmm. And my mom's a pretty smart lady. And then when I was reading a book that was kind of going over the history of drug addiction in the United States, and they pointed out that when the Native Americans were moved to reservations, that's when there was this sudden and tremendous uptick in alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then something that's a cultural stereotype or sort of a racist stereotype, it's hard to tell the difference between our circumstances causing this, or is it genetic, and we believe that it's genetic because of, you know, maybe the racist attitudes of that time period.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's an interesting thought, but it could be a combination of both, and it can be also also be the effect of when you grow up in an alcoholic home.
Yeah.
Then
you tend to
whether or
model
not
behavior,
are you modeling the behavior, or are you going in the opposite direction?
The first cigarette I ever smoked, I stole from my mom's pack.
First one I ever smoked, I stole from my grandmother.
There you go. And that's the
awful.
thing. You grow up around it, you think it's normal. Sophia's not growing up around cigarettes, and I'm really happy about that. When we walk down the street and she smells it coming from somebody, she's like, Mom, where does that smell? And she's disgusted. Yeah. Whereas when I grew up around it, it's just like, that's how our house smells.
That's how everybody else smells.
You don't think about it. My mom smoked when she was pregnant with me, and it was normal back then.
Yeah.
It was acceptable, and now we know that it can cause premature birth. And really what happens when you smoke cigarettes when you're pregnant is that the walls of the uterus can collapse and the baby can drown. And then it's just out it goes and it's dead.
Wow, really?
So, and I don't really know how it works, but that's what I read in a book. And that's what inspired me. Like, when I got pregnant, I knew I could not smoke cigarettes because there's nothing I want more than for Sophia to be alive.
When my stepmother was pregnant with my little sister, I used to hide the cigarettes on her.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I got away with that for a while. Then it wasn't. Eventually, it was no longer tolerated. But yeah, I used to hide her cigarettes.
I know. My doctor is always after me to cut down my caffeine consumption.
Yeah, it can have an effect on your heart.
I've
Anxiety.
been really good dropping down my level of a pot and a half a day to maybe a half a pot. You know, so I'm getting there.
It's been almost a year for me, caffeine free. And that's
completely?
Yeah, almost June will be a year. Yeah. And that's one of those, like, the experience that I've had, I think you can extrapolate to other forms of addiction. Because for me, using caffeine, I genuinely, wholeheartedly believed that if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be able to cope with life. Mm-hmm. That I really thought that I was a couch potato and I had to drink caffeine to get going, or to focus, or to get motivated, or whatever. Like, there were so many times in the last decade of my life where there was some big project I needed to work on, or so much laundry to do, and I thought, well, I'm going to sit down and drink some caffeine first, and then I'll feel motivated. And then I had enough, like, a couple of years went by where I started to realize I drink the caffeine, but I still don't do the thing that I claim I need it to motivate me to do. So I'm not actually getting the results that I'm expecting from my use of this drug.
Right. So you were just addicted.
And then I realized, well, my choice is either to drink a lot more caffeine or to just drop it and see how life is like that. And I took baby steps, but I eventually got completely off of it. And it's great. I'm saving money. I know I have a better sense of where my mood is because I know that it's not necessarily affected by some drug that I'm putting in my body. But the real inspiring aspect of the whole process of quitting was I really was like before is like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff and I don't know when I jump, am I gonna fly or am I gonna fall like Wile E. Coyote, you know? Like, what's it gonna be like? Who am I gonna be on the other side? That's how obsessed I was with ingesting caffeine. And I think that the same kind of logic applies with any other type of addiction. And so I had to risk it and go to the other side, and I found out that I can go 3 hours to sleep and I don't feel tired.
By the way, we didn't talk about where are we with this the Good Samaritan bill?
It passed the House unanimously.
It did.
Wow.
Okay.
Both bills unanimously.
That's amazing.
I haven't watched it pass dance.
That bill, that's the bill that's been there before and died in the Senate.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it's passed the House 3 times, I think, right?
I think
Was it your bill, or was it Joel Winter's bill?
It was mine, and Joel Winters took it over.
Okay.
And tried
So
to run
times.
with it.
So in 2013 it was HB 118, and in 2014 it was HB 1159. Both times it passed the House, and it was rocky both times in the House.
Senator Bouldin had a very disdain for the idea of including alcohol, even though we were trying to capture the underage
from my bill.
again.
Yep.
Which infuriates me, because that's a whole section of here's your stupidity. The 15-year-old who thinks that he can try rum. Oh, this is great. Well, they drink it, and what happens when somebody drinks something? Eventually, it starts to taste like water. So they drink too much.
I've had nights like that in my life.
And all hard alcohol, which in the state of New Hampshire is sold by the state of New Hampshire, all hard alcohol can lead to alcohol poisoning and can kill and has killed people, all from doing something stupid. And it infuriates me, because I raised a son who's now 21, and I can remember him telling me different stories. And there was one situation he was involved in that he had to take the person and get them help, because nobody would allow him to get the phone to dial 911.
Oh, wow.
They literally would not allow it.
Yeah.
And it was an alcohol-related incident. And it infuriates me that the Senate doesn't care enough about our kids to include it. I'm sorry, it does. And it infuriates me that the House amended it knowing that the Senate wouldn't do it.
Well,
I'm sorry.
For what it's worth, it's my understanding, and I might have understood incorrectly, but it's my understanding that Senator Carson in the Judiciary Committee at the in the Senate plans to amend a Senate 911 immunity bill to deal with the alcohol and to pass that this year.
Excellent.
That's my understanding. So I have a 911 immunity bill, and then Senator Molly Kelly Keene also has a 911 immunity bill. So mine starts in the House, hers starts in the Senate, and they go over. And
It's
so
good to hear that Senator Carson is working hard on this issue. She's been aware of it, and
yeah, she's a
I know
really
it's been
smart
a
person.
concern for her.
Yeah. So Senator Kelly had the hearing for her bill finally yesterday, and they're worried about the terminology because they want to make sure that
What senators are on that committee besides Senator Carson?
Senator David Pierce, I believe. Senator Betty Lasky. They're the Democrats. Senator Sharon Carson, Sam Cataldo, and Gary Daniels. And
So
those
if
are the Republicans.
those are your senators, you need to call them.
And thank them, because I know that they like the idea. They want to support it. They know that we need to save lives.
Do we know where
they're just working on the terminology?
Do we know where the governor is on it? I mean, will she?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
But she has a big drug misuse substance. I don't know, something task force.
Hopefully she'll be willing to sign both of them into law and not let them pass into law, and most certainly not veto.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we got to get them.
Pen.
I would love to see you have a signing ceremony, and not just for the ceremonial portion of it, but in all honesty, I mean, 19 years I worked in medicine. What you're trying to do is save lives, and that is so valuable. You can't put a price on it. And I am so grateful that you're up there doing this. And I know that people that do the job that I used to do are really hoping and cheering that you're going to get this bill through to make their jobs better.
That's definitely the attitude. And that's the thing is, you have law enforcement and you have healthcare. They're different topics. They have different goals. And that's okay. And we want both. So we're trying to weigh the best interests of law enforcement against the best interests of people's health. But I know that police all over the country support this. Police all over the state are telling me that when they go to the scene of an overdose, they typically don't arrest someone if all they have is what's in the needle.
Right.
If it's not some meth lab or human trafficking or prostitution or something crazy going on.
Right.
Okay, but that would be covered by your bill, though.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that really this legislation is turning police policy into law. And that's why it matters, is because the people that don't call 911 are afraid of something that isn't even going to happen.
Right.
And that's why we
Depends
make it law
on your
and we
location. I don't
publicize it.
think that I would
It depends
say
on the police
it
department.
really does,
Yeah.
because I know of a police officer who would love to nail anybody on anything, but I know others that would look at it and want to take the chance at trying to make a difference for that that kid or that person.
Right.
We're about out of time, but I do want to remind everybody, of course, and our interview with Amanda Bouldin was one of the interviews on the show this tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, and again at 10 p.m. We're going to re-air our 3-hour show of Unleashed on the IPM Nation live station from when we were at Liberty Forum a week and a half ago. And a lot of great interviews. Like I said, Amanda was one of them, and there were 8 others, so that's why the show is so long. So you can check that out tonight. And we'll make it available on demand. And
people can look you up on the state website.
Yep.
To get in touch with you.
Yeah, if you don't like anything I said, feel free to email me.
Yeah. Or is there a place you would like to direct people?
No, yeah, look me up. My last name is spelled Bouldin, and I'm Amanda for Manchester, Ward 5, which is Hillsborough District 12, just like in the Hunger Games, and which makes me Katniss, and that's really cool. But I'm
Love
looking
to get
for
you a
people.
Katniss pin.
I can be Ro.
I'm
Whatever her name
the little
is.
girl who dies.
Yeah.
No,
oh, that's
not
no good.
you.
No, oh, let's not end on a downer.
Maybe
Jeez.
you're just a mini Katniss. But
Yes,
so
I
I'm
can be
looking.
mini cat.
I'm looking for people that are affected by addiction in Manchester, in the state. So if anybody's watching this and they want to come and testify in support of either of my bills, they haven't hit the Senate yet, and we need to bring a big show to the Senate and help them understand that this isn't just an ideological thing, that there are people that this will impact, and not having this is impacting people. And, you know, people like me, like I see Sophia as she is now, and I love her with all my heart and soul, and things happen and people change over time, and there are parents out there who all that they want to do is keep their kids alive one more day, in the hopes that maybe tomorrow they can get treatment, maybe tomorrow a bed will open up at a treatment center, maybe tomorrow we'll get our tax refund back and we can pay for treatment out of pocket, or whatever's going on. They need to keep their kids alive one more day because they know who their kids used to be, and they want them to be that way again.
No, well said.
Very
All
well
right.
said. Thank you.
We got to go. Amanda Bouldin, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Jen, thank you, and we'll talk at you all a little bit later.
Okay.